So our call today is to speak to the people in our communities, people and organizations, have them present to you the people who are really closest to the problem once the rest of the system, as I like to say, fails. And that means that we have all, as a community, not done our job in the fact that we have so many people who are being displaced, such a lack of affordable housing, and many, many individuals and families struggling to remain in their homes here in East King County. So I call that a failure of system, a failure of community. And we struggle with that, all of us, whether you're in a position to provide leadership, whether you're a housing provider, whether you're an elected official. This is something that there's a weight on many of us. And I believe that some here in this space and who aren't here present today are bearing the brunt of what happens down the way when families have no other recourse, nowhere else to turn but to get rental assistance, to get some legal assistance or some assistance with their landlord to do whatever they can to try to stay in their homes. So that's what we're about today, bringing these voices forward to you all, connecting you all together. I do hope you'll stay for the breakout room portion, but understand if you may not be able to. But that is the place where we do that connecting and really encourage people to share with one another, because it will take all of us. It does take all of us. The other thing I wanted to highlight today is we're not going to be sharing a lot about all the things that are being done that we know are being done by our cities, by the county, by the state to try to address the housing crisis with more affordable housing, different renter protections that have started to be put in place. We are not going to go through that list of things today. Rather, we are talking about how that isn't enough and what more needs to be done and raising this call for urgency. So I wanted to turn it over first to one of our dear, important, vital partners of several that we're going to be featuring today, and that's the Eastside Legal Assistance Program that I know many of you are aware of.
So I really wanted to highlight the two major changes that have taken place. As of May 1st, and I'm sure many of you are aware, but it's important to stress this as we are starting to get an increase in calls about these changes. The requirement to offer a reasonable repayment plan has ended as of May 1st. And more recently, the requirement to participate in mediation has ended as of June 30th. The main takeaway from these two legislative changes is that the eviction process is going to move much faster for non-payment of rent cases. What that essentially means for ELAP is that we are at capacity with the number of calls that we've been getting over the past few months. Our caseload has doubled, and we've really reached the point where our attorneys can't take on any more cases. So we're trying to triage, do quick advice and counsel to as many people as we can. And really, we're at the point where landlords are no longer willing to negotiate a payment plan with tenants. So that leaves us with very little options other than to try to get tenants connected to Housing Justice Project and Northwest Justice Project as well for eviction defense. The concern that we have on our end is once a tenant is forced to leave their unit, they're going to be facing more than likely some sort of housing debt, which is going to make it even more difficult for them to get into another type of housing. We are hoping to partner with places like Northwest Consumer Law Center to focus on housing debt and how to help folks out of housing debt and get them into some more affordable housing options.
Danielle, we can come back to, because I know SART had some other things as well to present. So if that would be helpful, and we can kind of track some of these questions and then come back so that you have a chance to look at the questions and respond to that. Would that be okay? Or
yeah, that's great.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks so much, Danielle. And yes, please we may not be able to get to everyone's questions today. And in a little while, I'm going to be posting a Padlet space where you can also post things for us to track for later. So really appreciate your comments and reflections today. Our next presenter to share is from the Bellevue Conflict Resolution Center. Marcy McReynolds is here and her colleague Jill as well, and I'll have them introduce themselves and welcome them to the group and the space. We appreciate you being here.
Hello, everyone. So a little technical moment here. I need to share my PowerPoint here. Great. Hello, everyone. So we have a lot to share. We hope some of it's good news, and we're also here to learn today what people are seeing, needing, picking. I'm already taking notes about, what ELAP's thinking. I'm Marcy McReynolds. I'm the so-called manager of the City of Bellevue Conflict Resolution Center, but really I just get to work with an incredible team of people, very dedicated people. The City of Bellevue Conflict Resolution Center housed the ERPP, or the Eviction Resolution Pilot Program, from November 2021 to June 30th. And so what I'd like to do is just give you a tiny bit of background about Conflict Resolution Center, our normal practices that are ongoing for 27 years, and then what the takeaways are from the ERPP, and what the research that we're doing for a new program that would be voluntary, that wouldn't be working with the courts. So I'm going to move ahead. So our center, BCRC, provides a whole number of services to help people resolve conflicts. Our mission is to increase the problem-solving capacity among the people who live and work in Bellevue and Kirkland. We have an MOU with them. King County DRC handles cases on the east side, outside of Bellevue and Kirkland. And they handle the ERPP. So we do disputes between landlords and tenants on an ongoing basis. We also work with neighbors, businesses, families, and public entities. And our services are, we coach people. We really prefer to help a person resolve it themselves. Then we'll step in and do conciliation, which is a sort of on the phone, back and forth shuttle diplomacy, mediation, where we sit down person to person, and we do a lot of meeting facilitation and public participation work. Here's the important thing about our services is, first of all, they're voluntary, except for ERPP, where it was mandatory for landlords. All of our cases and here going on are voluntary. People have to want to come to the table. They're also confidential. We don't tell anybody. All our notes are confidential. They have a firewall from the rest of the city. Nobody ever sees them but us inside the program. And they're free to people who live and work in Bellevue and Kirkland. And here's another important piece of what we do. And some people might have an argument with this, but we are impartial. As mediators, we are impartial. Our job is to help people come together and have a difficult conversation, and hopefully an outcome that works for everybody. So now I want to introduce you to Jill Sulzberg, who is the coordinator for the ERPP program, or as we like to call it in-house, ERP. And I'm going to hand it over to Jill. Jill?
Yeah, thank you, Marcy. So as Marcy said, we do have a wide variety of services at the BCRC, but for the last year and a half, we've really been practically laser focused on the ERPP. And in doing that, we were really able to provide, some level of consistency as well as stability from the time the eviction moratorium really formally ended until the program ended as a matter of state law just at the beginning of this month. And during that time, we saw about 9,000 individuals. So 9,000 individuals were able to stay in their homes because of the program. And that's about 2,800 individual households. And this accounts for and of those households that came through us, about 80% stayed out of the court. So that means that either they successfully negotiated an agreement with the landlord, or or they had a private agreement that we didn't know about. But by coming through us, they were able to stay out of court. And that addressed people who owed on average $4,300, so maybe a month or 3 months rent, and then $13 million total arrears is what we've identified. And those numbers are accurate at a moment in time, but they don't reflect people who may have received rent assistance more than once or come through our program more than once. So what we really want to talk about today on the next slide is what worked for us. And I'll go in order, I think, of what's important. And that would be first, that we had a really, really great staff and volunteers who took this program from start to end and really dove in. We used culturally informed and trauma-informed programming and interview techniques that we learned through different training throughout the program. And we started using these techniques first in intake. And that was when, after we got an ERPP notice from a landlord, we tried to make 3 attempts to reach tenants. And that was our best practice. And we did that throughout most of the ERPP. There were times of really, really high volume where we may have made fewer contacts, but we attempted at intake to make 3 contacts to explain the program, connect the participants to rent assistance. Everybody got referred to rent assistance. We told everybody about ELAP and other community organizations that might be able to help. At intake, sometimes the intake specialist was able to drill down a bit about what was going on and sort of help focus on the rent issue, which is what the ERPP was all about. And they did this again using the trauma-informed practices that we learned. And of course, the impartiality. So that really helped build trust among all parties. I think that there were plenty of tenants who, especially at the beginning, came in and felt that we were there to help the landlord, because the landlord came to us with the ERPP notice. And then in turn, landlords thought that we were there to help the tenant. So by really maintaining this impartiality, we were able to build the trust of both parties, which was really, really helpful when they got into conciliation, which was the negotiation phase. And we used, again, a culturally responsive method, telephone conciliation, not face-to-face, where the conciliator went back. You might remember the old shuttle diplomacy. It was kind of like that. And we found that this balanced the power between landlords and tenants, made it easy to schedule, and again, in many ways, really reinforced our impartiality.
While there was inside, there was the team working on cases, there was also networking in the community, constant networking in the community. And EFAM, Eastside a financial assistance meeting, we wanted it to sound like family, and it was a consortium of many of you, and we were constantly talking, emailing, meeting, and ELAP was part of that, and then we were also part of EHAC, the Homelessness Advisory Council, whatever council, and so there were lots of safety nets. When we first came in, there were a lot of holes. People weren't necessarily connected. And I think that COVID forced us to find each other and to strengthen our connections with one another. So, and also being from the city, a lot of people who, maybe afraid talking to a government entity, connecting with a lot of the cultural services organizations helped create what we call a chain of trust, where, you know, somebody could say, hey, you can trust these guys. They're going to call you and you need to answer the call. So we had a lot of intercommunication, a lot of education that we shared with all of our partners, and partners shared with us. There's a lot of emails. Hey, who has money? Hey, what's going on with this person? Hey, ELAP, can you take this person? There was just a whole lot of work amongst all the partners. And that included the cities. And the human services and the councils who gave money, who gave lots of rent assistance, both cities of Kirkland and Bellevue. So the other thing is we did lots of translation, lots of interpretation. We kept Language Line very busy, and we put out as most of our that what we put out was in multiple languages.
So really what we've learned is exactly what Marcy said, that community partnerships drove the high tenant response, drove our access and everybody's access to rent assistance. And really it is what kept people in their house. And so we know that there will be a need going forward for a program that brings landlords and tenants together to negotiate rent, as well as other issues involved in rental housing, and also to bring them to the resources that are still available. And we are going to really build upon the practices that we've used for over 25 years, 27, I think, years at the BCRC, and the things we've learned during the ERPP to continue this and hopefully be there for landlords and tenants. And, you know, as we design this, we'll think about the successes and also, you know, just some of the challenges, one of which was that in many ways, the ERPP may not have understood exactly how some of the early communication happens. So by tying the beginning of the program to the pay or vacate notice, sometimes resulted in a lot of extra work and a lot of extra paperwork, where the on-site property managers knew that the tenant was most likely going to pay just after the grace period, but they were required to send these notices, which activated the ERPP. So by learning, you know, by building on what we know works and trying to avoid the things that we know may have caused issues, you know, we hope to be able to move on from here and develop some new kinds of connections and new ways to bring people together around their rental housing relationship.
Okay. So what's next? What's happening? So the state legislature, because statewide, the DRCs, the Dispute Resolution Centers statewide, were largely successful in this program. The state legislature increased our funding through the Department of Commerce, not the courts. And we have been encouraged by the legislature to do eviction resolution, housing stability sorts of programs. And so we are just now, we're going to begin doing research. Now, this is part of it. Talking to you, talking to our partners is part of it. So we're going to take what we've learned, as Jill just said. Jill is right now working on a report for the ERPP program. We're beginning to conduct research. We're going to do focus groups with landlords, with tenants, with agencies, with rent assistance agencies, community agencies, cultural agencies, and work together to create a model that's in a collaboration with the community, hearing you hear, and trying to build a model moving forward. We don't know what that will look like. We're really trying to stay open. It could have remnants of the ERPP program and hopefully resolve some of the issues with the ERPP program. I saw one question in the chat that said something about that we didn't know that we had to take the landlord's word for it about what rent was owed. And in those cases, we did refer to ELAP to say there's a discrepancy here and maybe you need to work it out with ELAP, because as impartial people, we can't be doing discovery like that. So we'll have to work out the kinks. The good news is we know what the kinks are. And so we're going to be working on whatever program is going to help give tenants and landlords a way to be made whole.
One of the things I wanted to share is that Guillermo mentioned that one of the hosts of this program is the Safe Haven Cafecitos, and another host is the Eastside Housing Equity Coalition, which is a new coalition that formed recently to really come together across communities and advance local housing policies that can disrupt racial disparities and inequities, and do that in our local cities with a specific emphasis on Bellevue, Redmond, and Kirkland. And that consortium, that collaborative is made up of Eastside for All, Indian American Community Services, who you'll hear from soon, and Muslim Community Network Association, and the Housing Development Consortium. So we thank all these partners for coming together today to be presenting this to you here. And so with that, I will turn to one of those partners, our next ones, from the Indian American Community Services. Also cannot say enough about this tremendous organization that really is there for people in times of need, and also in support with a range of services and programs that really uplift the Asian American community. And they've been on the East Side for literally decades. They can probably tell you the exact number, but I know it's over 30 years. So with that, I'd love to welcome Tulika and Kunjan from the Indian American Community Services. Thank you so much for being here.
It's really nice to meet you all. My name is Tulika Dugar, and me with my colleague and partner in crime, Kunjan. We are a part of the crisis care team, women's services team, and also small business support and services team. And on other than that, we just fill in wherever required, just because that's the need of the hour. From our side, we are trying our best to do needs assessment to see what are women in crisis, what their exact, what their needs are. And every once in a while, we keep getting the question of housing, because we as a race have a lot of dependency when we come as immigrants. And I'll let Kunjan handle that part, because she does a lot of the legal, consult meetings with immigration and with family law. And I'll let her speak to that.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Tulika. Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm Kunjan. I work with Indian American Community Services. So we help families with different type of crises that they face each day. The biggest part, the help that goes towards providing rent assistance, the rent assistance is important because it helps families that are struggling to pay their rents. So we deal with different types of crises in families. So to start with, I recently came across a family who lost their primary bread earner of the family. So I feel rent assistance is the major chunk of their expenditure when there is absolutely no income in the family. So we help them get some financial advice from the financial advisors. And sometimes the spouse is not on a valid visa, they are on a dependent visa, so they have to leave the country. So wrapping up the family, or maybe providing them help to get a legal status in this country if they are planning to stay back, is the major part of the job that we are working on right now. But as immigrants, they have a lot of fear, because the kids are in college at that stage of life where they can't leave and they're citizens. But the mom, the spouse, is not working. She doesn't have absolutely no idea of how the system works in the country, because in our culture, men is the person who takes care of the family the whole time. So just trying to help the lady of the house to step up and have a sustainable plan for her, so that she can stay in the country, finding them an appropriate course which she can undergo, and then transferring that
Upskilling.
visa from their dependent to a student visa, so that she can be able to stay in this country without any fear and take care of their children who are still dependent sometimes. So that is
Also, to that point, there's a lot of time lag that goes in each process, and in within that time for even applying for a visa in cases of domestic violence, in cases of legal separation where the partner is just not cooperating, and knowing the system and then literally lugging everything through it step by step. Everything takes time. And also rental assistance in a lot of our East King County is not, there's no funding. So it's like literally trying to, hustle and see where we can offer the most help and get them on their feet so that they don't keep feeling dependent as well.
and same is the story with DV survivors. We work with, we have almost 65 plus DV survivors. We run a support group called the Sathi Sisters, where they take care of each other pretty well. But then when housing comes into picture, that is the biggest challenge that they're facing right now. They are in an abusive relationship, but they don't have the courage to step out of the house because they really don't know where to go. So that's
Because
when,
again, the dependent status and the time that it takes for paperwork to come in.
yeah. So uh, we try to place them and try to help them as much as possible through the rent assistance program which we run. But they always say that they need some kind of a temporary housing
Mhm.
without any wait time, so that they can take their decision of moving away as soon as possible.
ASAP. Yeah.
They take years to decide whether the relationship will work for them, just because they have so much of fear that once they step out of the house, there'll be no place for them to stay. So that's
Mhm.
where we come into picture, and we try to navigate them, connecting them to the right resources, so that they take a call for themselves. And sometimes they waste 13 years of their life stuck in that abusive relationship, because they came on a dependent visa. They were not allowed to step out of the house. They are just confined to their four walls and really don't know how the system of this country works. So that's where major chunk of our time goes into navigating them and making a sustainable plan for them, so that they feel confident about it. And we conduct legal clinics every week, family law clinics, immigration clinics, and estate planning. So if anybody from the community needs help, you can contact us anytime. And we have attorneys whom we work with all the time to just guide them to the right things. Finding them an appropriate attorney is also a big challenge which we are facing right now.
With all the wait times everywhere, there's a wait time.
Yeah. And layoff is also one kind of crisis which I feel which we are experiencing the most recent, where big giants they have been massive layoffs all the time. And again, coming from as immigrants, they are not allowed to stay back after a particular time, so they have to look for jobs. That is also one part of the crisis which we are taking care of currently.
Thank you both so much. And thank you for all that IACS does in the community. You're holding a great deal, and we appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, everyone.
And I think I saw Sart come in for Eastside Legal Assistance Program. And I wonder if, Danielle, if you can maybe point Sart to a couple of things that you weren't able to cover that we want to be sure get shared today. And if you want to incorporate any of the questions that came in, you can do that too. So I'll turn it back over to Danielle and Sart Rowe.
Thank you, and thank you for joining. Sart is our Bellevue Housing Stability Attorney. Sart, I quickly went over some of the more recent changes that have taken place and how that has affected our caseload at ELAP. But I was hoping you could maybe speak to a little bit more about the clients you've been working with and where things stand in regard to those changes and the effects that they've been having on our caseload.
I'm happy to do so. The biggest change is that the dispute resolution centers are no longer a mandatory part of the process for evictions, which means that if somebody has a dispute with their landlord, the landlord gets to go straight to court. The dispute resolution centers have had mixed results, although they have been very successful in at least like 30% of our cases of decelerating and finding an answer. The change in the law also removes the requirement. By the way, my name is Sart, S-A-R-T, Rowe. I'm a lawyer here at Eastside Legal Assistance Program, they, them pronouns. The requirement for a payment plan with regards to past debt has also been renewed, or sorry, has not been renewed. So landlords can now go straight to court without offering a reasonable payment plan. So those two things have seen a massive increase in the amount of eviction cases that are being filed, and that our clients no longer have the opportunity to try to mitigate situations. The last thing that we've seen is the rental assistance countywide has almost entirely dried up. So we see individuals who may have been able to get help a few months ago have no financial resources available to them. And the most disheartening, though, is not a change in the law. It's what has happened to rental prices, especially for seniors or individuals on a fixed income, is even if we have been able to get them rental assistance and they're able to pay rent, we've seen rents go up 50 to 200%, 200% being an outlier, but 50% is not uncommon. Taking a neighborhood where a senior may have lived for 20 or 30 years and removing them from the ability to live in that neighborhood they've contributed to for years. So we get them rental assistance, but it feels a little more like a relocation program because they're not able to stay in that neighborhood they've been a vital part of for years. I'm happy to answer any questions that are out there. Some cities have put forward some relocation assistance or longer time limits on increasing rent. Seattle has some of the strongest protections, but cities including Renton and Kirkland have put some protections in place also. We would love to see similar protections in Bellevue, but the long-term issue with regards to affordable housing is really what's affecting our clients most and pushing them out of the communities that they either work in or that they have grown up in.
Thank you, Sart, so much. I'm checking to see with Danielle if there were any other things that you wanted to address before we turn to our next presenter.
Sart, the only other thing I did mention was the conversations we've been having around housing debt that our tenants will be facing.
So we really see that like the consumer debt area is going to be one that explodes within the next 3 to 5 years. And as soon as 3 months from now, individuals who have a past debt, sometimes those are going directly to collections. The other area is security deposits. We've seen a lot of what I would call fraudulent and unlawful withholding of security deposits. I've had at least 2 clients where the landlord has tried to renovate an entire unit based on the security deposit and charged $20,000+ to do that renovation to our clients. It is very easy for someone to send something directly to collections. It is very difficult for our clients to fight that or to fight it in small claims court or even on a larger scale, kind of as a class action. There is only Northwest Consumer Law Center that is engaged in this type of fraudulent debt stuff, and they're a small 3-person nonprofit. They do great work. I love them. But the amount of cases that we're seeing with fraudulent debt, withholding security deposits, or if somebody who would qualify for rental assistance moves, they have no opportunity for rental assistance, and then they have a giant debt that could be with them for the rest of their, or for many years, probably 7+ years, making it very difficult for them to re-rent anywhere or possibly end up homeless.
Thank you. I know that people are buzzing with probably more thoughts and questions for you and for some of our previous speakers too. So we will move on at this time, but please, everyone who's listening and here, continue to put your questions in the chat, and we will have some breakout spaces after, and also another place where we're holding some of the questions that can't get answered today. So apologies for the things that are going to be left with some unresolved.
No, just thank you so much for also putting on this forum. There's a lot going on here, and I appreciate that you're listening and also engaged in trying to find some solutions.
Thank you, Sart. We appreciate your partnership and leadership so much. Thank you. I'd like to now bring in and welcome in another key community partner, and just so grateful. As you can see, we have really tremendous people doing amazing things. And while they are stretched, while they are overwhelmed, I do hope we are all able to take a moment to really appreciate and extend gratitude to each other, not just the ones that we happen to be sharing with you all today, but with all of you, a great deal of gratitude for the work that you're doing to support people in the community. So for tomorrow, one of our partners that serves Latino youth and families here in East King County, they have services in Spanish and Portuguese, and we have a community member from their services that they support, Alicia Arroyo, and you can present in Spanish or English, whatever.
Spanish is better. I understand English, but not really well. Sorry.
No need to apologize at all. We have interpreters here, and you may share some of your story now if you'd like. And again, a great appreciation for you being here and willing to share. And please, you can do that in Español.
Thank you guys too.
Gracias.
Bienvenida, Alicia. Déjeme nada más hacer un anuncio muy rápido. If you want to hear Alicia speaking, like we have interpretation, you need to choose the English channel on the interpretation button that is in the bottom. You will hear Alicia interpretation.
Alicia, welcome. It is a pleasure to have you here today. And please, you can begin anytime. It has been very difficult for me in my life. I'm a single mom, and pretty much with the rental, it is so high. And since COVID, I have not been able to work much. So I have been affected, but I'm so thankful because your programs have helped me out. I was blessed because I received your support, and I have no words to tell you how thankful I am, because if it's not were for your organizations, I have no idea what would happen to me. I don't know what I would be doing. I probably would have been homeless, living in the streets. Thank you so much, Alicia. And also, I would like to tell you that Miriam has supported me so much. She's a super helper, like you say in English. And she is always there. Whenever I need some sort of support, I call her. She's always giving me information. If she cannot support me, she will refer me and will say, hey, call such and such organization. They might be able to help you. And she helps me. And my English is not up to par. I'm not able to understand everything. I understand a little bit. But with her help, I have been able to get all the support, and I don't feel alone. I feel thankful because these organizations are so good, and they're full of people with a good heart, and they're helping people like me. And I'm telling you, I have no words to thank you enough. All the things that, all the help, all the support I've gotten. I'm really thankful.
Alicia, thank you so much for sharing and for sharing what this support means to you as well. We appreciate how difficult it can be to share with a room full of strangers, and you've been very gracious with your story. If you are thinking about other people in similar situations, here we have so many people who are really wanting to address this problem. What do you hope for? Is there anything that you can share that you would hope that this community here can work on together?
What I would hope is that for people, well, if we have a need for something, so that we could call people like you, organizations like you, and if you can listen to us, so it's not just me, but then other people in my situation or maybe a worse situation than me, and then you can realize that we are here to bring support through you. We are people who don't have the same opportunities as others. We don't have the opportunities as immigrants here in this country. I hope you understand that. And thanks to you, we can receive their support and the help that we all need. And I am just so very grateful.
Thank you, Alicia. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Alicia's sharing as well. Thank you. My last piece here is to just share a little bit from the Muslim Community Network Association. Mohammed Bach was unable to be here today due to a family emergency, but thankfully they're doing okay. But he did ask me to share a bit with you, so I'll do that. MCNA, the Muslim Community Network Association, does policy and systems change. They're one of our Eastside Housing Equity Coalition members, as I mentioned earlier. They do equity in education, small business support, and civic engagement and outreach. And they have a network of more than 20,000 family members here in King County. Through the Eastside Housing Equity Coalition membership, they're working to promote housing justice for Muslim Americans, advocating for fair policies, combating discrimination, and ensuring equitable access to stable and affordable housing opportunities. Together, creating an inclusive society is their vision, celebrating diversity and offering equal housing opportunities for all. So grateful also to MCNA in this work, and I know many of you are familiar with them and the many years that they've been here in the community supporting Muslim families in the region and many immigrants from all different races and cultures.